Right now, we're gonna nature journal mushrooms. Yay!
This video adventure is designed to be participatory, so get your nature journaling stuff ready and approach it from a creative mindset instead of just consuming another video. You could at least get some sketch notes in.
This week's episode is on YouTube, and next week's episode is on my Patreon. Step number 1, find a place with mushrooms.
Step number 2 is to get set up. So make sure that you have a journal that you like. Make sure you have the color red because you saw what some of those mushrooms look like. But other than that, a basic palette would be good, or whatever else you use. Something to measure with. I'm going to be using these water brushes, and I'm going to be using some basic brush pens, or Japanese style brush pens. Wow, I have a lot of those in here. So those, something to paint with, something to clean up with, and was that chocolate in here somewhere?
Step number 3 is to get something on the page, because it's not nature journaling unless you get something on the page. Everything else is not nature journaling. So thinking about nature journaling is not nature journaling. I'm going to set the camera up right here. You're not going to be able to see what I'm doing on my page, but you'll be able to nature journal for yourself. Look at that view of those mushrooms right there. Let's do this.
Here are some photos of some other cool mushrooms in case you need some other subject material to draw from. Feel free to pause the video or take screenshots and nature journal or sketch from these photos.
Sometimes you just need to start putting anything, and if you know a certain type of drawing or a certain approach is easier for you to do at the beginning, maybe it's like a blind contour drawing. Do anything you can like that, or your metadata, whatever, to start getting something onto the page. So I just did a really quick sketch of the small mushroom right here. So if you're nature journaling along, now is your chance to draw some of this perspective. You could write some questions. You could create a list of the different things that you're seeing. If you're here in person or nature journaling from a specimen at home, you could write about the smell. You could formulate a haiku. Every once in a while, I do get a whiff from this one right here. So go ahead and take this time to do some nature journaling and at least sketching.
Here you can see some of the sketches and questions I did. Try to just get something on the page. You can make your colors look better by really examining the colors you take for granted. What is actually white? Are there subtle variations of white? And what about the red on this mushroom? How many shades of red are there? As usual, one of the hardest parts with watercolor is reserving the whites. Instead of using an opaque white tool, I'm going to try to paint around all of the white spots. All right, hopefully you also captured something in this time, either in the field or at home from video. But now what we're going to do is we're quickly going to do some spore prints and get these set up for dissection, because cutting into things is a great way to nature journal them. Right now we're going to do the spore prints, and one thing that you're going to need is some different types of paper. I think something cheap and big is one good option. You're going to need some type of cups or other vessel that you can put over the mushroom cap. I like clear ones. You're going to need a couple freshly picked mushrooms. Get your nature journal. You could potentially do this right in your nature journal, but I'm going to work with a couple different types of paper, including dark toned paper. I have a brown toned paper here, and I have a black toned paper for things that have pale colored spores, and I'm going to do it all on this clipboard type thing right here so I can move it around. It needs to be somewhere where it's not going to be moving, and the cups are to prevent air currents from getting in there. Oh, airflow. Oh, don't forget your chocolate. I already ate most of mine. Don't touch mushrooms and eat chocolate at the same time, probably. You're also going to need something to cut with. Or correct, I'm going to cut the whole stem off, the stipe. Now I'm going to take the cap carefully. Hopefully
It's not too old. Maybe I should have picked a slightly younger one. I'm gonna carefully place it like that. Now I'm gonna find, I can see bugs running around on it already. It might get my paper really wet. And then I'm gonna put this right there like that. Piece of cardboard in underneath here. Put that down here. And I'm gonna cut 2 of these and try to fit them on there as well. This looks way too old. I don't think I'm gonna even try with that one. The spores are probably too old. On top here. So a plain sheet, this is my sort of playground. I recommend having some source of big sheets of paper like this, even if you're a nature journaler and work predominantly in a small sketchbook. I think having access to something like this and playing around on this size of paper has a lot of benefits for your practice, even if you're not doing these mushroom spore prints. Make sure that your cat or significant other doesn't mess with these while they're check out how cool these are. It's been almost 12 hours and you can see a lot of spores came down there. On this one, they've might have even been a little bit too long because of how many spores came down. It's a thick layer. Look at those brown ones. Those are like purple black. These colors are really beautiful. I'm realizing I'm gonna need some type of fixative to make sure that these don't create a mess in my journal, because I wanna preserve how beautiful that is, so that it stays in my journal. One thing I can do is probably just put some masking tape over it, but I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get some fixative, a spray-on fixative, and use that, because I think including spore prints in our nature journal is a great way to nature journal mushrooms. Oh no, I think this one was too old. Look at it, it's just full of maggots and all of this juice dripped out on the paper. It's a beautiful spore print, but I don't know what I'm gonna do with that water, and unfortunately, this is the one that's directly in my nature journal. But good thing I put that piece of cardboard under it yesterday. Ooh, look at that. Oh gosh, this is getting a little bit more messy than I was planning. Hopefully you at home didn't use such a mature, large mushroom. It's a little bit too gushy and messy. But sometimes it's good to experiment with this. You know, some of us worry too much about the perfection of our nature journals, and sometimes it's important to get a little messy and a little bit dirty.
I bought some spray fixative. This stuff is used for pastel and charcoal arts. I'm taking all the cups off of the spore prints, and then I'm going to spray them in a well-ventilated outside area. This material is kind of expensive. It's not my favorite art supply. It's toxic, but it does come in handy sometimes, and I think it's the only thing that I can use to try to preserve these spore prints in my nature journal. Dissection and nature journaling go together very, very well. And one thing you can do before you even start cutting into the mushroom is draw it and draw the lines via which you're going to cut it into parts. And you can actually do sort of an imaginary dissection of things this way with your drawings. Just another way that drawing is a great visual problem-solving tool. So here I am showing the different possible ways that I could cut through the mushroom on different axes. This is something that you want to think about before you get the knife out. Look at that level of focus and determination on my face as I slice like butter into this mushroom. I usually don't cut toward my hand, but in this case it was necessary to have a delicate hold on the mushroom. Cutting it right down the middle, it does have symmetry, radial symmetry, so it'll be really interesting to see what it looks. Wow, it's so cool. I'm going to place one face down and one face up and start drawing them. It's a big mushroom, so be careful the scale that you draw it to. I recommend drawing it smaller. The really common thing is to draw it too big. Another important thing to nature journal about is the things that you notice that go against what you expected. So I expected there to be some more patterns and interesting stuff going on
down here in the egg, but it in the cross section it doesn't look like very much. And also the hollowness in the middle of the stem, I wasn't expecting that either. So those are really good things to write down. Because remember, nature journaling is also not just about making drawings. So be careful with your gills. They have a very precise geometry, at least on these mushrooms, and they have a type of radial symmetry that it's very obvious if it's done incorrectly, and it also has a major impact on the perception of depth and three-dimensionality. So getting the gills and the radial symmetry somewhat right can help the illusion of three-dimensionality. Getting it wrong can take away from that illusion. So I'm in very dangerous ground right now because I'm trying to draw them also at a slightly weird perspective here. So sometimes what you have to do in those situations is figure out if there's a pattern you can use to kind of fake it, to suggest it, instead of trying to construct it perfectly.
Let's put those colors in, and notice how I'm starting with the pale ones, of course. I'm not really using a pure white from the paper. I'm doing multiples at first, and I'm going to layer a lot of colors, not only into those white areas. As you can see, I'm using a little bit of pink, a little bit of yellow. Most things in nature aren't pure white, but now you can see I'm putting in yellow underneath the red. There's a lot more going on to this red than meets the eye, so pay attention when you're looking at things like this and try to actually match the colors, and it will pay off in the end. I found what looks like a dead centipede and a dead millipede next to this mushroom. Interesting, right? I wonder why they died. It's great to nature journal other organisms that are in relationship with the thing that you're nature journaling, because nothing in the real world is in isolation the way it is in field guides and boring botanical illustrations. I zoomed in on the legs of all of these organisms, including the snail, which didn't have any. Let's add a fun title somewhere on the page. I'm going to use the genus name for this species, which is Amanita. It's a pretty big genus, Amanita. There's a lot of poisonous mushrooms, some delectable edible culinary mushrooms in this genus. I like to use the brush pen loaded with watercolor to create titles. It's a really fun way to do it. Otherwise, I use bubble butter letters. But this is actually a lot faster than doing bubble letters, so pro tip right there. Step 9.5, eat a pint of ice cream so you can use the lid to put your PVA glue in. Yep, we're gonna need PVA glue next. This is your chance to approach it from a junk journal or art journal sort of perspective. So have fun, get your glue out, cut up these spore prints in different ways, and try gluing them in. I'm not super happy with how they came out, and I'm not trying to show you how to do it, but the main goal here is for you to see how you might imagine using this in your own practice. There's probably a really cool way you could use this with the type of nature journaling that you do. So I'm just trying to give you some tools, some ideas, motivate a little bit, inspire a little bit, and get you trying some new things outside of your comfort zone. Even though I did multiple layers of that fixative, I'm not sure if these are going to rub out, so I'm actually going to try using some parchment paper to protect these, because when I touch them, even with the layers of fixative, sometimes the spores seem to move. Now's the time to look back at our nature journal pages from Nature Journaling Mushrooms and see how we did. Think about what worked, what didn't. This is a good chance to reflect a little bit. Did you like the dissection? Did you do the spore prints? How did the spore prints turn out? The spore prints weren't my favorite part, but it was a good experiment, and I think that I learned a lot. And guess what? You'll learn a lot more too if you actually do some in your own nature journal. So even if all you have is a little sheet of paper like this at home and a pencil, just try drawing some of the mushrooms from this video so that you're also accelerating your learning as well, because the people who are actually doing the nature journaling are getting most of the benefits. This is the first episode of season 4 of the Nature Journal Show, and I think it was really fun. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you get out and nature journal this winter if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. And next week's episode is going to come out on my Patreon. So I'll see you next week if you're one of my Patreon members. If you're just a YouTube follower, think about subscribing to my Patreon. Otherwise, you're going to have to wait until the next week to see the next episode of the show. Bye. Happy New Year. Bye.